will come in a little later, but welcome everybody. And any thing people want to check in about before we jump into the program? Any things you want to share?
Well, we should remind people about the Ruth Bader Ginsburg thing real quick.
Yes.
To register for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So July 15th, we have our virtual tour of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg exhibit at the Illinois Holocaust Museum called Notorious RBG. And so you can register online. It'll be about an hour and 30-minute program. And it'll be a virtual tour of the exhibit by the curator of the exhibit, and then a live Q&A at the end with a docent. And you can register online at Chicago Hyde Park Village. We are charging a modest $10 registration fee. And we had a really good visit there last year, just about a year ago, to see an exhibit on called Purchased Lives, about slavery in the United States. So we were going to go there in person, but we are doing the next best thing, since things aren't really opened up quite to where we want them to be. And it's open to all. You don't have to be a member or affiliated with Hyde Park Village. So Ed, if you want to come, you're welcome to join us. There's a registration link on our website.
Wow, actually, it sounds very interesting. And I forget where I was at, but I saw like a promotional postcard for it that I thought was quite interesting, but it was specifically for that exhibit. So
yeah. So why don't we go ahead and get started? It's my pleasure to introduce Ed Madden, and he is the coordinator of public outreach for PACE Suburban Bus. And we've been wanting to find out more about PACE so that we can understand what this adds to our transportation opportunities, public transportation opportunities here in the greater Chicagoland area. Mr. Madden has extensive experience in both the public and private sectors, and he's known for his advocacy of consumer-related matters and has a long history with that. Among the many responsibilities with PACE Bus, Ed promotes the numerous transportation services that PACE offers in the 220 communities of our 6-county Chicagoland region. And his presentation today is all about the PACE Bus, and he looks forward to answering any questions you may have. So please welcome Edward Madden.
all right, thank you, Barbara. I would like to really just kind of give everyone a general overview of PACE and the many different services that we have, perhaps maybe to clear up some confusion or even misconceptions of what PACE does, or really to emphasize a lot of the things that we do that you may not necessarily be aware of. I am going to kind of focus most of the program on our ADA paratransit service, because that's, I'm assuming, are most of your members Chicago residents? Do you have any from the suburbs as well?
I don't think we do.
All Chicagoans.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, good, because it'll be applicable for everyone. But I think that probably one of the most misunderstood is ADA paratransit, and so I will emphasize a good amount on that as well. So I'd like to start. I do have a PowerPoint presentation. I also will explore both our website and the RTA, which is our parent organization's website, and then show a sample video. For instance, I tested on my end, it was all working, so it should here as well. So I'm going to share my screen and start with my PowerPoint presentation. And I do kind of want to just emphasize a little bit of our history to begin with. PACE, as we're known today, really was established in 1983, and that's when, you probably remember, this was shortly after the Carter administration. It was during the early years of the Reagan administration.
I think we lost Ed completely.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say all of a sudden there was silence.
Yes. I'm sure he'll rejoin.
Connection. So I apologize for that. I will go back to share screen. Does anyone remember where I left off or where I lost you?
You were talking about how it got started,
Okay, very
I
good.
believe, with President Carter, right?
Yep. All right, very good. I'll get right to there then. All right, so can everyone see my screen okay?
Mhm.
All
Yeah.
right, so we started, really with the act of the Illinois legislature back in 1983. And this was when the economy was doing very bad. We had certainly different challenges than we're having right now, but it was still a really tough time then. It was just past the Carter administration, the early years of the Reagan administration, and the economy was awful. Interest rates were 18% for a mortgage, if you could even get it. The gas prices may have been a little bit lower, but relatively they were very expensive. There were gas lines around blocks to even get in and get gas. They were rationing it. If you had an odd numbered license plate or one that ended in an odd number, you could only get gas on odd number days and vice versa for even. So it was really tough, and especially tough on the bus companies that existed at that point. Quite frankly, several of them had gone bankrupt, and the ones that were in existence were really struggling on the verge of bankruptcy. So the Illinois legislature realized there was a problem, that they needed to really save public transit. So they created the RTA, that's the Regional Transportation Authority. And they are the parent organization of not only Pace Bus, but also CTA and Metro Trains as well. At that time, we started out, we were officially the Suburban Bus Division of the RTA, or the Regional Transportation Authority. One of the real benefits that came about at that time was there was this disjointed number of different bus companies in the area. There was Westtown Bus in the west suburbs, and Nortran in the northwest suburbs. There were several in the south suburbs and North Shore. And it was very difficult. By combining and creating Pace, it allowed for a unified fare system. It allowed for being able to transfer without having to repay a fare. You just, well, back then we had transfers, if you remember those. But it just really, really streamlined the organization. But essentially, because we really absorbed all of those legacy bus companies, our history really does go back to the streetcar days through those separate organizations. So the people that are working for Pace, especially the ones that transitioned back at that time in the early 80s, they went way back, and their experiences went way back. And quite frankly, a number of them are still with us. We have people that have been with Pace over 40 years. And so that's really helped to continue some great service. Here's some examples, some pictures of the buses. On the upper right is the Nortran bus. That's what I knew. Although I grew up in Chicago, I was in the Edison Park neighborhood on the far northwest side. And so we utilize that in addition to the CTA. The lower right or lower left corner is the Westtown bus. So if anybody was in the Berwyn, Cicero area, Melrose Park, that may look familiar to you. When I first started with Pace, I was a little confused by the name, and I know a lot of other people. I initially thought it was an acronym where the P stood for something, the A stood for something. And it's not all uppercase Pace either. It's really just Pace. And all it is a marketing name that they came up with. I think it was just to evoke, an image of being on pace, or, staying on pace. And so it kind of stuck, and I'm really glad it did, because, as I mentioned, our formal name is Pace, the Suburban Bus Division of the Regional Transportation Authority. And it's nice to just be able to answer the phone and say, hello, Pace. It is interesting, though, when I mention Pace in the suburbs, people think of regular, either our fixed route buses that operate the same, routes every day or same every Monday through Friday, possibly on Saturday, some on Sunday, or our dial ride services. This, for those of you that either live in the suburbs or know, you'll see the smaller Pace shuttle buses. They're not technically Pace operations. I'll explain more about that in a little bit, but that's what people will think. But if I mention Pace in the city of Chicago, we're thought of almost exclusively as ADA paratransit. And if I mention the Pace bus or vehicle, many people think that. The reason why is because that's the predominant service that we provide within the city of Chicago. But our services are varied. As I mentioned, our fixed route buses, the everyday buses that go on those predetermined routes. We have express bus services that I'll explain more about. Community transit, where we make vehicles available to social agencies and schools for providing services that wouldn't be served by a regular fixed route service. Of course, we'll discuss a good length about the ADA paratransit. And then we have some business services, or for those that are commuting, our van pool program, where we make vans available to, if there's a group of, say, 8 or 10 people that live in the same area, the same neighborhood, and they commute either to the same company or in the same general area around the same time, vans are made available to them. There are some costs with that. I'll explain briefly about that as well. We do have a ride sharing service. That's really more of the old fashioned, just putting two people together, where I may be going, for instance, to my office in Arlington Heights every day, and a gentleman down the block from me makes that same commute. And, although we use our own cars, it puts us together. And then our pulse lines. These are our new kind of modern services. They're limited, but this is going to be the future of pulse, of Pace service in the future. So I'll talk a little bit about that. As you can imagine, if we're known as Pace, the suburban bus agency, our main service area really is the suburbs. We cover the whole 6-county region, literally from the Wisconsin border to the Indiana border, to the far south side of far south end of Will County and the far west end of Kane County. So of course, this is the collar counties. I have to tell you, I knew Pace served those areas kind of vaguely before I started working there, but I really didn't realize to the degree that it was. And it was my second or third day, and I was literally going to an event in Will County. I was traveling down what I would call country roads and literally farms on both sides. And all of a sudden I saw a Pace bus just fly by me in the opposite direction. And then it kind of dawned on me exactly how expansive our service really is. But we also serve the city of Chicago. And I alluded to that. You may be wondering, well, why Chicago if there's the CTA? Well, many of our routes really connect to the nearby Chicago border, to CTA stations and L stations and other CTA buses. Some example of that is our Milwaukee bus goes all the way from the Northbrook area with a switch over at Golf Mill and concludes at the Jefferson Park Transit Center. We have buses that go to Forest Park, although that's technically Chicago. That's the end of a line service that then provides reverse commute service or commute service into the city of Chicago. We have some buses that operate out of the Midway Airport area and connect with a number of the CTA buses, the Orange Line there. On 95th Street and the Dan Ryan, a number of our south and southwest suburban buses terminate there and connect with, of course, the CTA Ls and all of their buses as well. Additionally, we have some of our express services that serve the city of Chicago. We have an I-55 express service that actually travels on the shoulder of the Stevenson Expressway. It allows for even if traffic is backed up, which it pretty much is all the time, even late at night and on weekends as well, It allows our buses to bypass stop traffic, and it provides express service. There's a number of stops and different routes that operate on that interstate. But essentially, that's from the Plainfield, Burr Ridge, Bolingbrook area, and then provides express service into the city of Chicago, to the UIC Medical District, to downtown, to North Michigan Avenue, and serving, for instance, the Northwestern Medical Complex there as well. And then we have new I-90 service that serves from the Elgin corridor along I-90, the Jane Addams Tollway, serves essentially the Schaumburg area, Arlington Heights, into Rosemont, where it then connects with the Blue Line to either go into the city or one more stop to the airport. And then a number of other buses that use that Rosemont CTA station. It's a major hub for a lot of our lines. And then again, as I mentioned, the CTA used to provide, I didn't mention this, but I will, they used to provide the 88 paratransit service in Chicago. And there were some issues in the management of it. Not that service was always perfect with PACE, but the RTA recognized that we had a better grasp of it, and they asked us to take it over. And when your funding source asks you to do something like that, you do it. So we do provide service throughout the whole 6-county region for ADA as well. And as I mentioned, that includes Lake County, McHenry, Kane, DuPage, Will, and of course Cook County, including that Chicago service as well. And our area, or the core of our service, is throughout the whole region. Our bus garages are the heart and soul of our operation. Although our headquarters is in Arlington Heights, that's where all the administrative people are. I actually work out of there normally. Of course, with COVID-19, we're still working remotely from our homes. But that's my location, and our payroll, our legal department, and administrators as well. But the core of it's our bus operations, our bus garages. We call them divisions. And they run the gamut. As you can see on the slides, we have one, we call it our Fox Valley division, that's in Aurora. Our Heritage division, that's in Joliet. We have a north in the city of Waukegan. Our North Shore is in Evanston. Our Northwest division is in Des Plaines. We have a river division, that's the Elgin area. Our South division in Markham. We have another in South Holland, another Southwest division in Bridgeview, and then our West division, which actually is probably our busiest division, or is our busiest division, that operates out of Melrose Park. And then we do have some limited services in McHenry, and we do have a McHenry division there as well. I do want to just touch upon some of the different fares. Although our fares really have been free until literally 2 days ago during the COVID-19 crisis, to expedite people not having to stop at near the bus operator and pay their fare and blocking things. We diverted to no fares being collected at all. Unlike the CTA, not all of our buses have rear doors. As a matter of fact, the majority of them don't. And so we didn't really have a good way of doing rear boarding that really did expedite safety for riders. So we just had a load and go. People would get on, but we do have to charge money, and that started on Monday. Our regular our fare for fixed routes is $2. Now, that assumes if somebody uses the Venture card. I hope many of you are familiar with that. If not, I want to let you know it's our fare card. I'll talk a little bit more about it, but it's a way of being able to either physically use a debit type card, or there's an app, a mobile app variation of it as well. If you use that, it's $2. You can still pay cash. We reluctantly take it because it costs us money to process it, but you do save a little bit. That regular fare cash is $2.25, and you do have to pay exact change. So if you need to get on our bus and all you have is a $100 bill, it's going to be a very expensive ride because the drivers do not provide any change. Now, there are some options where people can ride either at reduced fares or even ride free. Our reduced fares are administered through the RTA, but allows for riders to essentially pay half fare. So if you use the Venture card, which the reduced fare card is also a Venture card, one side is the ID card because only the person issued to is allowed to use it. The other side's a Venture card. It costs $1. Where you really save money, though, is by using the card as if you have to transfer, because regular transfers are just 30 cents. By transferring, I mean where you ride one bus part of the way and then you get off and wait for a second bus and then transfer to that second bus. If you use the reduced fare card, it's only 20 cents. And that second transfer is free, and actually any subsequent transfers. Now, most people only take 1 or 2 buses, but some take 3. And by doing that, you can save some money because although you're allowed to pay with cash, if you do, you have to repay that full fare every time you board our bus. So it's can get very expensive. First of all, you're paying more. The extra cash fare is, as I mentioned, $2.25 for regular fares. It's $1.10. So you'll save with the Venture card for that, but when you transfer, you have to repay that cash fare again. So if you use your Venture card, it will use. 2 other examples that are completely different than any of our regular fares are our express buses. As I mentioned, those I-55. And we also have some express buses to popular events. So this is really only applicable for somebody who's mostly in the suburban area. They want to go to a sporting event like a Cubs game at Wrigley Field or a Sox game at Guaranteed Rate Field or a Bears game at Soldier Field. We have some express buses that run from suburban locations, and they take people directly to that sporting event and then back again. Those fares are $4.50. Although if somebody does have a reduced fare card, that is also half. So it would be $2.25. And then ADA paratransit, that's $3.25, and that's across the board. It doesn't matter if you have a reduced fare card, or you also have, or you have a ride-free card. The only difference between the two, between reduced fare and ride-free, depends on household income. If your household income is under varying dollar amounts according to the size of the family, you're eligible for it. But ADA paratransit, that fare is charged regardless, and that's for each trip. So it would be $3.25 going to your destination, and then another $3.25 coming back home. The Venture card at the very top here, there's some examples of it. On the far left is the ride-free card for those with qualifying incomes. Reduced fare, you're seeing there in the blue, is actually reduced fare for students. And I don't, do we have any students in the group? I won't talk much about that, but you never know. I mean, I just finished certification myself through my community college. The green one, the third from the right is our ADA paratransit. As I mentioned, that always also allows for reduced fare rides on our regular system. And then the purple on the far right is the reduced fare card. Hopefully you have that, even if you don't use PACE. That's also applicable on all CTA buses, L trains, and also the Metra trains as well. You can't physically use the card on Metra though. As you know, the model is different. When you board a Metra train, there isn't any readers or a cash box that you put your fares in, like a bus. There's an operator that goes around and collects tickets. If you notice, I have app only in parentheses. You can use your Metra account to buy your tickets through Metra, but you need a smartphone. I know not everyone has one, so this may be applicable or not. But if so, we do have an app that's available if you go to the Apple Store or the Android App Store. You can download it and use it. I recommend it. It's a good way to keep track of your account. You can still do that with a regular card only. There is a way for if you know, obviously mostly everyone here is comfortable using the internet, but for those that aren't, you're able to call in. There's a phone number on the back. You can call and you can add money to it over the phone, or you can do it virtually online as well. We have Venture readers at all of the transit centers. Every CTA L station has one. And then many Jewel food stores offer being able to get a Venture card and being able to add value to it at their customer service counters. Many Walgreens do, and some CVS pharmacies as well. It all depends. Not all of them do. Typically, the ones that are either near a PACE bus line or near any of the CTA services will have that service. And you can also go to any currency exchange in the area. One thing I want to caution you though, make sure if you do use that to load money, that you don't let them charge you a fee. If you've ever utilized any currency exchange services, they charge you for everything. You ask a question, it's $1. Kidding about that, but this is one thing that you definitely don't pay a fee though. We actually pay a commission to them to provide that service, so there shouldn't be any add-on fees. So just know that that's an option. But if you are comfortable with the app and using online, that definitely is the way to go, because the number of different options you have, you can quickly switch back and forth, not only different cards. So if you manage a card for another family member, a child or grandchild or something, and or they want money, hey, can you give me money to add to my card? Well, you can do that once you set it up pretty easily. So I encourage that. I did want to talk and spend some good time on our ADA paratransit. This is a service that is probably one of the more critical services we have. And I don't mean to diminish our regular service, because you know, we count on that to get to work, to get around town. But ADA paratransit is a service that provides transportation where somebody else may not have any other options. Although all of our buses, all of our vehicles are 100% accessible. So if somebody's in a wheelchair or a mobility device, they can use our fixed route system. But how do you get there? You know, PACE buses don't stop in front of, or even CTA buses don't stop in front of everyone's home. This is a service that actually comes to one's residence. It's not a door-to-door service, it's actually curb to curb, because we are not allowed to go to in somebody's home, for instance, or when we get to the destination, we cannot take them into a building. Our drivers always have to have visual contact with the vehicle, but it does allow for door-to-door, so it will come to your driveway, it will come to the entrance of your building, for instance, if it's a drivable entrance. And I want to really classify, this is something that it's not we're just doing it because, you know, we want to or it's the right thing to do. It's mandated by law. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, we are required, as any other transportation agency, that any service we provide for like or able-bodied riders, we have to provide like or para service for those that are unable to use it. Now, it does come with some limitations, though. It complements fixed route service. So the devil's in the details here are much like real estate: location, location, location. Where you are matters. And the reason why is because it's mirroring or providing like service to regular fixed route service. There has to be from some fixed route service nearby. So there's a requirement that all trips must start within 3/4 of a mile of fixed route, and they must conclude within 3/4 of a mile of fixed route. And one of the most difficult things that I have to do, especially when I'm talking to families, for instance, that are kind of in the far west suburbs or far north suburbs, and there really isn't any fixed route service near them. In general, the closer you are to the city, the closer you are to the core of downtown, the more service there is. And the further out we go, the less service becomes available. And the reason why is because there's less demand in those areas. If there was service, if there was demand, there would likely be service. But so with an auto centric, environment that we're in, especially in the suburban area, the demand's just not there to support fixed routes. So unfortunately, there's also no ADA paratransit. And it's very difficult for me to explain to a family who has a child that is disabled but might be able to get a part-time job at a point in the future. And now they're exploring that and they want to know, hey, can you get my child? And even though that child qualifies for ADA paratransit under their abilities or inability to use a fixed route service, if there isn't fixed route service nearby, there is no paratransit. And then additionally, if a route, and many of our routes in the suburbs really only operate Monday through Friday, where they, and many of them only operate during rush hour. So we have a number of routes that really feed service into the metro stations, for instance, so that people can get from their suburban home to the train station and then from the train station downtown. So those routes only operate from say 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. There is no service during the day, and then they start up around 3 or 4 and then run to say 7, maybe 8 o'clock at night. Well, if somebody is near one of those routes, ADA paratransit is also only available during the same hours that fixed route service runs. So that can be, definitely a caveat to be aware of. Additionally, somebody has to go through a certification process. At one time, there was a lot of kind of abuse of people who really didn't need that service, but were kind of fudging it to get the car to be able to use it. Again, that way they didn't have to walk to the bus stop or worried about how do they get to the fixed route service. This was nice because it comes to one's home. But a number of years ago, the RTA, which administers that program, really cracked down on it. And they made a very thorough qualification process that one must go through in order to be able to use the service. That's a good thing because otherwise there's some availability issues sometimes. I mean, only so many people can be accommodated depending on demand, especially when many of us want to travel around pretty much around the same times. And then I do want to caution, there are some limitations as well. This is not a direct service where it'll take you from your home to a doctor appointment directly. The way the system is set up, we share rides. So those vehicles may allow for anywhere from 3 to 8 people to be able to get on them, depending on the physical condition. For many people, they have cognitive conditions that they can still use regular seats. We don't have to necessarily worry about securing wheelchairs, or might be visually impaired or hearing impaired that would still be able to use a regular passenger seat. But they're shared rides. Now, I say that with the one clarification that right now, today, they are not shared. Because of the COVID-19 situations, we did not want to risk any contamination of our riders, especially our vulnerable riders who have the highest percentage of health conditions and the ones that are the most serious as well. So when this COVID, the coronavirus pandemic erupted, we, of course, we were really discouraging any use of the system. It was really for not emergency, but for really, truly needed service. Fortunately, the demand went down for various reasons. Even if you could get around, it doesn't mean that you wanted to and put yourself at that risk. And we shifted to providing single rides. How much longer we're going to be able to do that as things get back to normal, we don't know. It's too early in that process. We do know right now it's too risky. So right now we're continuing with shared ride or with single rides, but I do believe, eventually when things do settle down, at some point we will be getting back into shared rides. And I kind of went over this already, the service times, they mimic the existing regular service. The application process can be a bit cumbersome. I don't want to discourage anyone that would be eligible from going through it, but it's a lot more than just sending in an application, maybe having your doctor sign a letter. This is where there is an application process. It does start by contacting the RTA, and I'll let you know how to do that in a little bit, where they will begin the process with a phone interview. They want to kind of pre-qualify applicants from the very beginning because, for instance, why put somebody through a thorough process in the end to only tell them, well, you're not eligible because of this. So they have about 5 or 6 pre-screening questions. Most people that truly, anyone that truly needs a service will pass that. You'll get an application that's mailed to you. You do have to submit it with health records and some documentation. They'll let you know exactly what that is, depending on one's specific condition. And then one has to go to an in-person interview. Now, again, those are on hold right now because of the pandemic issues. They're not even doing this right in the moment. So if somebody currently is an ADA paratransit rider, they're still allowed to be able to continue. If your card expired, in the meantime, it's automatically been extended. If somebody still wants to go through and apply, just know it'll be a while before you'll get an appointment for that in-person interview. But literally, they have to make sure that the person has the condition that they say they have. And so they have a well thought out, essentially test that they provide. It's an obstacle course. There's one location on the south side of Chicago. There's another one on the north side. They will bring the applicants there. A paratransit vehicle will come and pick them up and take them back. If the person either wants or needs a family member or a care companion to accompany them, they're allowed to go. We certainly recommend that. But then ultimately the decision of whether a person is found eligible is on the RTA. PACE ourselves, we don't determine who can ride. We just follow that anyone that's been certified is able to use our system. Scheduling trips is not the hardest thing to do. It's not the easiest thing either. It's going to be getting better because we are instituting an online, a way of being able to schedule your trips digitally, either through a laptop, a desktop, or a mobile device. Most people right now do use the service by calling in. Reservations have to be made the day before travel. There is the ability for somebody to, if they're, for instance, using paratransit for any type of regular travel, either for a job where it's Monday through Friday, both getting to work and getting back home, or if they go to a certain location every Thursday at the same time, you are allowed to set up a subscription service. But in general, where people are traveling for various things, maybe to the doctor one day and for shopping the next, you have to call and make those reservations the day before. They are accepted from 6 a.m. until 6 p.m. except for holidays, and by holidays I'm referring to strictly the major holidays. And then you call the carrier in your area. There are actually a number of different providers. They're not technically PACE employees. We do contract with a number of different transportation agencies, and they cover certain areas. So we have a couple of companies that cover, for instance, the Will County area. There's some that cover DuPage. They're different than the ones that cover Chicago. And even within Chicago, there's a north side, a number of north side providers and a number of south side providers. We are also transitioning to a unified call-in service so that it doesn't matter where you're from, whether you're up in Antioch or you're in the city of Chicago, we'll be calling to one, but right now it is set up to call for your specific area. Also, I do want to just kind of mention too, where you can travel. I did allude that as long as your trip destination that was in 3/4 of a mile, you can travel there. So conceivably, you can get anywhere in the 6-county region that we serve. So if somebody wanted to travel from Waukegan to Joliet, they can get there on paratransit. Now, I have to be honest, it won't be easy because you will have to switch providers. So if somebody traveling from Waukegan would use a Lake County service, at some point they would transfer to a Cook County provider. And then when they get to the Will County area, they would then be transferring to a Will County provider. And scheduling and coordinating those is not always the easiest thing. So it might be a long trip, but if you need to get there, at least you know it can be done. As I mentioned, when you call, or not as I mentioned, when you do call in, the operator is essentially going to ask you what time do you need to be at your appointment. Typically, people say, I need to leave by a certain time, and they want to really qualify that to know, well, what time do you need to be there? Because we're juggling a number of different routes, a number of services. We get over 10,000 reservations a day for our paratransit service. It gets very, very complicated. The most difficult thing for us to handle is the high rate of cancellations that we receive. About 40% of all reservations are canceled before that trip occurs. And that's just the nature of the beast. When somebody plans up one day, let's face it, things change. And so, we have to then juggle. At the end of the day, around 10 p.m. at night, 11 o'clock, a computer program runs this and coordinates all the different requests and where people need to go, and then puts out a schedule. But then at 6 a.m., when the lines open up again, the cancellations start coming in, and that can impact it. So if I'm scheduled to be on a trip with 2-3 other people, and a route was determined, but 2 of those people now canceled, they're scrambling to get me on a different bus or to add somebody else who was on another one, and it can be really complicated. So they're going to want to know the time you have and then build in enough time for that trip. Again, the expectation with many riders sometimes is that, if that trip would normally take me 20 minutes to get from my home to, say, my doctor's office, well, I would expect that trip would be about 20 minutes. But the reality of it is it's going to be longer. It will be, the other factors are, who else is taking that ride? And I may get on first, but if we're picking up 2 other people, we're going to go to their homes first and then go to my stop. And then sometimes if their stop is before my stop, they'll end up getting off and we'll go into their destination before mine. So there's a number of things that can complicate it. The one thing that we work to do is to make sure that all trips take an equivalent time of what it would be if you did take public transportation. So for instance, we would know, a 20-minute car ride, if you're taking the bus or an L train somewhere, that might be different. First of all, you have to walk to the bus stop. So you have to build in that time. Waiting for the bus is part of the travel time. If you need to transfer, you have to factor in that, that waiting time while you're waiting. So, but our goal and, the intention here is to make sure, again, providing a service similar to what able-bodied riders would be able to get on regular fixed route service. So that 20-minute trip may be an hour. It might be an hour and a half sometimes. That's something we definitely need to know, and something riders definitely need to be aware of and how they're planning their day. So canceling a trip, we do ask that riders cancel at least 2 hours prior. Things can be classified as late canceled if somebody does it too late. They try to be as flexible as possible, but unfortunately, there are some riders that just make it a habit of always canceling at the last minute, that they had to institute some type of I don't call it a fine, but some way of encouraging a different behavior. So somebody can be classified as late canceled, and if a rider starts getting too many of those, They start out by getting a warning, letting them know, and then at some point, they can actually be denied service for a preset time. I can tell you the process is very, very giving and forgiving to a point. And then at some point, though, we do have to say, okay, enough is enough. It's really hurting our system. You are permitted sometimes to do a same day thing. Like, what if something does come up? If you give us at least 2 hours notice, that might be possible, but only if the carrier can accommodate that. We essentially guarantee if you call the day before that we get you that ride. But and again, I would never ever count on this because the system is sometimes really, really overworked that it's almost impossible to actually get a same day trip. But it can be under certain circumstances. So just know if you're ever in that circumstance, call and at least try. But I would not count on it. Pickups. It's important that the rider be ready ahead of time. We do have a thing that the vehicle driver must wait at least 5 minutes from the scheduled pickup time before that they will take off. So now we try and get there early if at all possible. And if the rider's ready, great. They get on the vehicle and continue. If we get there, say 10 minutes early for whatever reason, there was a cancellation and that bus is now there 10 minutes and the rider's not ready, they have the protection of up to 5 minutes after their scheduled pickup time, that bus or that vehicle must remain there. So obviously, if you're ready, you're probably anxious to get going anyways, but there is that buffer. But if they wait more than 5 minutes after that scheduled time, that vehicle will take off or can't take off. Most drivers are reasonable and they can, but they're on a schedule too. And so there's some pressure for them to sometimes, even if they want to wait, especially somebody they know, they may not have a choice and they have to continue on their roster. So there is a 20-minute window pickup time for any reason if our bus was late or it was delayed. So let's say somebody had a 1 o'clock pickup time, we actually are allowed to get there till 1:20, and that trip is still considered on time. But in the suburbs, it's only a 15-minute window. It's slightly different, but 20 minutes is usually the one that's allowed either way. Again, a bus, if it's there late, it still has to wait, even then, that minimum 5 minutes before it can take off. So let's say it got there you had an pickup time at 12, the bus got there at 12:25, it's technically late. But even so, what if you went in to make a call or to check on something? You don't want that bus or that vehicle just taking off. They have to wait at least 5 minutes. So it allows somewhat of a buffer. If there is that period, the driver's always required to call the carrier so that the carrier then calls the rider to make sure that there's not a confusion of where the pickup is, because sometimes, if you're going to a residence, it's relatively straightforward. But let's say you're picking up at a mall or at a medical center, there may be confusion where that pickup is, and it can be resolved in the moment as long as there's communication. But again, if there's no rider and that driver is in the correct location or the one that was scheduled, and the driver takes off, that does get recorded as a no-show. And a rider is allowed, so many of them, I think it's 6 or possibly up to 10 before there's any type of real consequences. But along the way, there's various points where warnings would be given to the rider. And again, I want to, just let people know, the ADA paratransit is not perfect. There are a lot of challenges. We still have to travel in the same traffic. And sometimes there can be an incident that occurs that can throw off the system. So patience is not only a virtue, it's a lifesaver sometimes in dealing with this. And I got to tell you too, paratransit is one of I mentioned, the most difficult things that we provide, but it's one that we take the most serious too. And we really want to have as few of the issues that sometimes can occur. things are getting a lot better as well as technology is improving. Um, so some of the things of sometimes even being able to not have to wait on hold for 15 or 20 minutes to talk to an operator is expedited by newer technology, especially for those that are able, who will be able to use the online services too. Also, I want to just mention that the fare, it's $3.25, as I mentioned. You can't pay cash. The one thing you cannot use as of today is your Ventra card to pay for that. That's changing. We're working to expand to have a Ventra card reader on every single vehicle. We're not there quite yet, but that'll be something coming out within probably the next year, where you don't have to worry about having cash or a paratransit ticket. So I just want to see where we are on time. And I do want to caution too, paratransit drivers, they are not medically trained. They cannot lift a patient, carry packages, especially right now with the coronavirus issues. We have to keep a certain distance. And so an important consideration right now is whether somebody, if they are unable to really get around by themselves, that somebody travel with them. Again, our drivers are allowed to go beyond the front door of a residence, and they cannot go into a public building, and certainly not pass beyond the first floor, as long as they're in the one exception where they still are able to maintain eye contact with their vehicle, but they can't ever get out of eye contact regardless of the circumstance. And then quickly, I want to talk about our TAP program, which is an excellent alternative for those that use ADA paratransit in the city of Chicago. Regrettably, this is not available for suburban ADA riders. It's only within the city of Chicago. And the reason why is because there's a unified city department that manages all the taxi services. And we were able to set up a system that was able to be used citywide. Unfortunately, in the suburban area, there are about 200 different cab companies that operate some in just one municipality, some within others. We tried to get it set up and it just got too complicated. Hopefully, again, with newer technology, where that may change over time, but right now this is only in the city of Chicago. But it's an excellent option. What this allows is for, again, ADA paratransit riders only. They are able to, for $3, get a $20 value of cab fare to be able to use on a taxi ride. The benefit of this is that it allows for last minute travel plans. As I mentioned, you really, for all practical purposes, need to make your reservation a day before for paratransit. This can be done like anything, just like anyone would do to call a taxi. You do have to purchase these in advance. You're given that information once you're certified, but it does allow you up to $20 of value. So it's a $17 saving. So once that cab fare reaches $20 though, the rider is responsible for anything above that, but it can be an excellent way. And I know quite a few paratransit riders that use this exclusively. They almost never use an actual ADA paratransit vehicle because this is just so much more convenient and manageable for them. And currently, right now, to encourage single travel during the COVID crisis, there is no $3 charge. Anyone that has an ADA paratransit can automatically get that $20 value to ride the taxi. Right now, how long that's going to last, we don't know. We do know it's going to be a while, though, because with a potential resurgence of the virus, either if there's a spike again during this first round, or subsequently in the fall, if there's a kind of a round two, this may be for quite a while, but it could be gone tomorrow as well, or once things get better, it can quickly end. But even then, for $3 to get $20 of cab fare, it's a real nice option. And somebody can take up to 4 one-way trips each day under that program. So I'm going to just finish the slides here with my contact information. I'm going to provide a follow-up or a follow-up information sheet for Barbara to send with my contact information. So don't necessarily worry about writing this down. And then also there's a RTA representative, Candace Jones, and this is her contact information. Again, I'll include that in what I said, but she's a good resource for the ADA certification process, or for anyone that wants to get a reduced fare card or a ride-free card. So I want to just kind of question, I know we were running to about 1:15. Did you want to do questions now, or I did want to just explore a little bit our website, just to show show our participants. Although it looks like I lost my screen share. Let me get back to that. All right, can everyone see our website here? Yep. All right, so this I'm actually personally proud of, because I also, one of my other responsibilities with PACE is I'm their webmaster, specifically for all of our website content. This is our brand new website. It's only been up for about a week. It's a brand new design. It's streamlined. So we're literally at the front page, pacebus.com. But some of the biggest things are obviously on the front page. Our bus tracker. This allows, if you are using a PACE bus, a regular fixed route bus, and you want to know, hey, is the bus on time? You're able to utilize this service. This website is optimized for mobile devices. Of course, it works on all desktops, laptops, iPads, but believe it or not, almost 70% of our website visitors use cell phones. So it's optimum, but it's a way if you're going out traveling. Let's say you're trying to time your travel. It's a day like raining here, and you're like, boy, I want to minimize my time waiting at the stop. It's a way to check to see where your bus is along its route to just minimize your waiting time, or just for general information. Of course, we have our ADA paratransit information. This might be helpful for anyone that wants additional information. We have some brochures here. We talk about the role of the driver. Actually, it's some of the limitations. This isn't ADA paratransit, it's not medical transport, so there are differences. It's still public transit. So this kind of explains some of that. In Ride, these are just our different tools. We have a Dial a Ride. Now, I didn't really talk much about this. These are services that in the suburban area provide ADA paratransit-like services, but it's open typically to all seniors within that certain sponsors designated area. Typically it's townships. So if I click on Cook County, Barrington Township offers a Dial a Ride service, Bloom Township. Chicago, this is actually our, when I talked about the TAP program. In Crestwood, that village itself has their own little Dial a Ride service. I do want to caution you, these are very limited. They're open to everyone within a certain community, but whoever pays for that service. So if a township sponsors it, they usually limit it to their township residents. If a village sponsors a Dial a Ride, it's almost always limited to the residents of that municipality. But I just want you to kind of be aware there are some other services. The first thing I would do for those that do live in the city is to contact your township, because almost all of them do, not all of them do, but most do. And even if they don't, or if you live in a township like Elk Grove Township, in addition to the township having a Dial a Ride service, the municipality of Elk Grove Village also has one as well. So I think if you get a chance, go onto our website. There's even information if you're looking for a job, for instance. We have employment opportunities. If you click on the employment tab. Now, in the moment, we're pretty much hiring just for mechanical services type things. But during the normal time, whatever that's going to look like, you'll see administrative positions there as well. I did want to go to the RTA's website. There are, as I mentioned, some limitations right now. Their offices are not all open. I'll scroll down to their main number here for the ADA paratransit. They have their phone number listed here to call and get an application, or if you have any questions. They also provide an RTA travel program. And what that is it's a way of getting personal one-on-one coaching on how to ride public transit. So let's say you used to ride the bus, way back, that was 40 years ago. You haven't been on a bus or a train in that whole time, and quite frankly, your comfort level is high. They have travel trainers that you can schedule. Again, normally, I'm sure this is on hiatus. Well, yes, it is on hiatus right now, but that travel trainer will come out and go on a couple of actual trips with you. They'll meet you either at your home or at a Starbucks, for instance. They'll show you how to plan your trip using either the RTA's phone service or their online travel planning service. And then they will accompany you on that trip. There's no cost for it other than the actual cost of your train ticket or your bus fare or L fare. So it's a really nice thing. They don't even have, well, they have the phone number there, but again, maybe you can call and get on a waiting list if that's interest. There's information here on their certification program. So again, if you notice on the menu bar, they're rtachicago.org. But again, I'll be including that information in the handout that I assume would be able to be emailed to everybody. So there's also on YouTube a number of videos. We have our own Pace Bus channel where you can learn more about paratransit, where if you have, like I say, you haven't ridden the bus, we have some, getting around on Pace videos that you might find of interest. If you just go to YouTube and search Pace Bus, you'll see, our channel and other videos that others have put up, including the RTA. The RTA, again, I would say Chicago, because when you search on YouTube, you're searching globally, and there are a number of different RTA organizations. But if you put in RTA Chicago, it'll pull up there. Let me see, let's do it right now. I could type correctly. Yeah, they have a number of, I'll stop this. Just a number of informational videos up there as well. All right, so I'd like to kind of open it up to any questions now. Are you able to control that, Michelle?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Ed. Everyone should be able to, you may unmute yourself if you have a question. Ed's going to be with us till about 1:15.
Or whatever.
So he has a few minutes for questions.
Carrie?
Go ahead, Christy.
Yeah, my question is, are there financial limits for the TAP program?
No. Really the qualified thing is one's physical condition or cognitive condition, whether they qualify for that service or not. You could be a gazillionaire, and as long as you qualify, you're entitled to that service. And the fares are the same. That's the one service where there is no reduced fare options, or for somebody who is otherwise eligible to ride free, they still have to pay that $325 regardless.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question about being able to eventually use Ventra on Metra. How long is that going to take? In our neighborhood, people are quite interested sometimes in being able to do that.
Yeah, that might be a while. I mean, the big issue they have is right now the system to use the card, or the Ventra card. You need a reader, and you need one on each car, each train car. So just their model is not set up for that. And the amount of, I forget what the estimate was, they would actually need about 30,000 readers, and those readers are pretty expensive. So it was just a financial issue. Now, as technology improves, I'm looking forward to the day when you just get on and it It can automatically detect your card either from your phone or I don't know if it does a retinal scan or
Like with
something that
wireless
really-
technology, it seems like it wouldn't necessarily need a
Yeah.
reader.
It might be a little scary, but again, usually technology is good, and so we'll get there. But the app is actually a reasonably good option for those that are comfortable and have a mobility device and are comfortable using apps. I strongly encourage it because that's really the best way. You know, for instance, when you get on a train, you either have to go into the station and get buy a ticket from the agent there. They may or may not be on duty at the time you're there, and then you would either have to pay on the train. But if the station is open or the agent is on duty, and for whatever reason you didn't go in there, you pay they charge an extra $4 to buy a ticket on the train. But if you have your cell phone and your app, and let's say if you're like me, you have a tendency to run late sometimes, and that train waits for no one. It's nice to be able to just jump on, and even if the conductor's right there, it's easy to pull that app up. And there's a virtual ticket that you show them. There's a way for them to make sure that it's real, to validate it. And it really works because you can literally get that ticket in the moment, just where you're going, and that's a nice option. But again, I know for those that don't utilize a smartphone, or even if you do, you may not use apps, that can be cumbersome. So the one thing I would say is still, do the old school way. If you are over 65 though, make sure you have the RTA's reduced fare card, especially on Metro, because that saves you half. And some of those Metro fares are pretty pricey. I mean, you go from some of the outlying suburbs to downtown, that fare might be $12, $13, $14. So to cut that in half, and for me, I do some crazy things to save $1 sometimes. I would encourage you to have that.
So Ed, there's an amusing story. My roommate who's on the call here, we do the reduced fare tickets on the Ventra app. And so it's quite the savings because we have RTA reduced fare cards. But my friend got carded to be sure that he was really qualified for the reduced fare. Was he old enough for the reduced fare? And so you do need to have your RTA reduced fare card with you to prove that you're eligible for it.
I told the agent I'd no longer look like I was 16.
But it is nice to have it on your phone because
She said, I want to see your ID.
sometimes we decide to take the train at the last minute when the buses are too delayed. So from Hyde Park to to Millennium Station. So it comes in handy.
Sure.
I had heard that the regular Ventra card would be available on a smartphone app, so you wouldn't even have to have a card at some point in time. The regular Ventra card, is that in progress, or is that going to happen? Do you know?
It actually is. I mean, that's what that app replaces. So you can still physically have your card, and in certain circumstances you may want to. But the benefit of that, and again, is technology is getting better. The caution I have of someone using their cell phone, for instance. So there's a lot of mobile wallets you can use now, Google Pay and Apple Pay and many others. You can still do that on our system. Like I didn't even really kind of get into it because it opens up just a bunch of different options, but it is a valid thing for you to be aware of. So if you use Apple Pay or Google Pay, you can pay digitally through the Ventra reader. Now, it's not there yet, but in the very near future, like literally probably within the next several months, you will be able to tie that mobile wallet to your Ventra card. Because right now, although you can use it, it's as though you're paying cash.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't allow you that 30-cent transfer if you get onto another bus, for instance. When you tap your phone a second time, it charges you that full fare. And it's the higher cash fare, not the reduced savings. So technology is getting there where you'll be able to use that. is an option. I know I have a smartwatch that I can use that to pay. But it's I think will be a big benefit is once you can tie the two together, so that instead of it coming out of whatever credit card you link to your mobile wallet or checking account, to use it to come out of your Ventra card, and that can be automatically linked to your a credit card or a banking account, so that you never run out of money. You know, that is going to be kind of a game changer, because now you're really, again, for those that are comfortable, it's going to be a seamless transaction.
I'm wondering, you said you had to register for the taxi access program. Do you have to do that if you have the ADA paratransit, and how do you do that?
Well, there's a way to set it up, because you do need to set that up, but that's done at the point that when you are certified by the RTA. So don't worry about that process yet. If you are ADA rider now and you haven't utilized it, then call the number on your ADA card. That's the RTA's number, and make sure that you're in it, because you also have to be linked into that system. But I would encourage you to do it, because it's a really good option. But these are all explained to a rider when they're certified. So, but to me, it's like I say, I know some people that's all they use. They just use TAP only, and almost never use the actual paratransit. But it's only for this feature is only for paratransit riders.
I have one of these City of Chicago ID cards that they gave out, and I'm not quite sure, does it ever tie into any of the transportation, like the RTA or anything, PACE?
I'm not familiar with it at all, to be honest with you, but I do know it's not connected, because if it was, I would know that.
Because it was just
Yeah.
something they're handing out for ID purposes, and I've never
Sure.
got it, but I'm thinking I don't even carry it, because I'm not sure even what it's supposed to give me.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I knew more about it, but I don't.
Okay, well, it was just something that, another card in the wallet.
Just what you need, right?
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Ed.
Ed, that was great. I learned so much about PACE. It was a really thorough overview of the whole system. I found it extremely helpful.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed
Really
it as well.
educational. Thank you so much. And let me also congratulate you on your website.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not the only one.
And
a lot of,
also, I love your shirt.
oh, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
The website is easy to navigate, and listening to your presentation today, PACE is much more extravagant and larger than I even
Oh, yeah.
knew.
Oh, and I actually didn't even get into a lot of the other thing. I mean, I didn't really, I alluded to certain things, but I mean, we have programs that we set up with companies that we provide vehicles where if they have so many employees that like go to the Downers Grove station and then need to get out to the corporate center in Lisle, for instance, where we set up services there, and we have a vehicle program for nonprofit groups and community organizations where if they're transporting their clients or their participants, there's a way for them to get a vehicle on a permanent basis that's actually always at their location. So our list is extensive, and you're going to see things change too. I did talk or mention our Pulse lines. Pulse are going to be kind of a hybrid between regular bus type service and train service. And so we're always looking, for innovative ways for people to get where they need to go quicker. We're competing with ride sharing services, which are great as long as you can afford them, but they are pricey. And they might be cheaper than cabs, but they're still not cheap. And so we're working with them as well to see if we can partner either by providing innovative services that they power. For instance, there's a service in, I think, Dallas that it's an on-demand public transit bus. And we have some of those right now. I didn't really mention them. They're in very limited areas. There's one that serves the Arlington Heights, Rolling Meadows area. There's one that serves Batavia. Those were typically instituted in an area where there was existing bus service, but because of low ridership, we had to eliminate the regular bus. So then we put in this smaller kind of on demand where you can call, but that's the future. I think what you're going to see is a combination of buses that go over longer distances, more of like our express buses that can get people farther throughout the region, but then also more remote micro transit that might exist just within a couple of neighborhoods, for instance. But yet where people can still get to work and shopping and entertainment venues within. Again, technology is driving that. We're looking to cooperate with those ride-sharing services for providing what we call that first mile, last mile dilemma. So yeah, let's say there's a CTA route near you, but you can't get to it easily, or how do you get there? Well, if there could be a way for us to subsidize that fare for that, as long as you're using public transit, to take that Uber or Lyft vehicle to the train station, for instance, or to one of our transit centers, and then continue their commute on public transit. The issue we had really so far has been relative to ADA the ADA requirements. And that's because most of those vehicles are not accessible. Some are, most of them aren't. And any service that we provide for able-bodied riders, we are legally obligated to provide like-minded service for those that are unable to use it. And that was a big complication. But again, things improve over time. Many more of those vehicles are doing it. There are a number of our riders that don't have a physical limitation or enough of one where they can't still use a regular passenger car. So that's improving. And let's face it, their industry has been disrupted by COVID-19 as well. And so, what we see today might not be what we see a year from now, 5, 10, but I'm actually very optimistic. I do know, internally we are scrambling. We eliminated a number of routes during the pandemic because there weren't riders. We serve a lot of the suburban schools. They're not all served by those traditional school buses. Many of them in our higher density suburbs still use PACE for their kids to get to school. Well, when school was not in session, it was silly for us to run those buses, and for the routes that we needed to still provide service for essential workers. We had to be more cognizant of less riders per bus. So those buses were moved to those other routes to provide safer travel for the ones that really, really needed it. Now, how much of those routes will come back? We don't know. Our system as we know it today may not be what it'll be even in 3 months. But the one thing I'm encouraged by is there is a really strong mentality, both within PACE, but also through the RTA and the CTA as well, of reimagining things that hopefully in the end, things will be better. It may get worse before then, but ultimately, when we finally do prevail, that there is improvements overall. Because quite frankly, we've had some routes that, if you've traveled the suburbs, maybe you saw a PACE bus, there was 1 or 2 riders on it. And how fiscally prudent is that? We're not recovering the cost of that trip. Now you're seeing less and less that over time. We're converting to more smaller buses in different areas. But there were some routes that just, for the ones that needed it, really needed it, so they existed. But it can't continue quite the same way. So, but I am optimistic. People I work with, there's really this kind of can-do attitude of making this and making it better. Again, it's probably going to be very difficult for a while, not only with our agency, Metro. Metro lost 97% of their ridership and even more of their income. So somewhere, some way, we got to reconcile financially. But I am optimistic. I do think we will get through this, and when we do, ultimately, things will be better. But
I love
until
your
then,
optimism.
yeah, we just got to
Yeah.
get through this right now.
I do appreciate your optimism. That's good, because some of us hope we live long enough to see it.
Yep, all of us. Yep. So, well, that's my one wish for all of us, is that we do this again next year and we're all here.
Yeah.
And the year
Yeah.
after.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Oh,
you
you're
very
welcome.
much.
I enjoyed it.
Thanks for explaining that PACE is not an acronym.
Yes, Kathy. Good one.
Now I won't lose sleep. Trying to figure
Thank you
that
so
one out.
much.
Thank you.